Italy, 1939. Mass rallies. This salesman, Mussolini, is selling an idea of order, superiority, purity. He becomes friends with this man, Hitler. These two mates ruin a lot of the world. Out of the ruins of Italy comes a new movie language, neorealism, a type of filmmaking that'll deal with the trauma of war. This is one of its most famous moments, filmed in real streets, urgent and tragic. Movies in the 1940s had to get this raw because life had become this raw. But before they did so, before they entirely sobered up, there was the little matter of Stagecoach and Orson Welles. Stagecoach made a star of John Wayne. The camera rushed into his face.
Yeah. Hello, kid.
Hello, Curly. Hiya, Buck. How's your phone?
It was the 94th film made by John Ford. Here in his beloved Monument Valley, Ford was interviewed by another great director, Peter Bogdanovich. The interview shows how much Ford hated analysis.
Take one. More than one take, Roy. Shoot.
Mr. Ford, I've noticed that that your view of the West has become increasingly sad and melancholy over the years. I'm comparing, for instance, Wagon Master to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Have you been aware of that change in mood?
No.
Now that I pointed out, is there anything you'd like to say about it?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't.
Would you agree that the point of Fort Apache was that the tradition of the Army was more important than one individual?
Cut.
Ford didn't want to say much about his movies, but others did. One critic wrote that he captures the twitches of life and the silhouettes of legend. Stagecoach is a movie legend. It's about a bunch of misfits on a journey. One of them, a saloon girl and prostitute, is cold-shouldered by the others. But she's befriended by a cowboy called Ringo Kid. Many of the shots in the coach itself are filmed with back projection. Ford contrasts the claustrophobia of the stagecoach with classically composed pastoral wide shots like this one. In this setting, the Ringo Kid is brave enough to challenge the snobbery against the girl.
I am really a coward. I know I am. So that's why I did foolish things. And I was decorated 8 or 9 times. Trying to prove that I was not a coward. But after it's all over, I still know that I was a coward. I've always found that the little quiet little man that nobody pays any attention to usually has more guts and courage than the big blowhard, the big noisy, the big outspoken fellow. It's the little man that does the courageous thing.
In this scene, Ringo and the girl start a new life together in the mythic, meritocratic West.
Well, kid, I told you not to follow me.
Ford stages the scene in deep space. Stagecoach helped create a new visual fashion for deep space and deep focus in the 1940s. As we've seen in Japan a few years previously, Mitsuguchi was staging things in depth too. But Ford and his cameraman combined deep staging with deep focus. The trend in cinema had been for the flattering effects of long lenses. which create shallow focus, eyes sharp, hair soft, background out of focus. Deep focus uses a wide-angle lens, allowing actors and objects to be really close to the camera and really far away. Both can be seen crisply. And deep focus emphasized the distance between them. It was great at rooms, especially if you kept the camera low, because then you'd see the ceiling, which plunged into the background, making a bold compositional line. Such deep staging and deep focus allowed the audience to choose where to look. As early as 1929, Sergei Eisenstein had suggested it as an alternative to editing. Our eyes do the editing within the frame, jumping around from place to place. Stagecoach's innovations changed film history. One person who saw Stagecoach 30 times in 1940 was this man, Orson Welles, who strode the movie stage, the magician of cinema, who became its colossus.
A miracle of the ancient East.
In this scene from his first film, Citizen Kane, Welles and his cinematographer, Greg Toland, seem to be pushing deep staging as far as it can go. Welles plays a hubristic newspaperman. He's less than a meter from the camera. Everett Sloane is so far away that he's smaller than Welles's nose. Such deep staging forces scale. It's as expressionistic as the shadows of Caligari. More than any other film of the time, Citizen Kane challenged the soft and shallow look of romantic American cinema. But why did it do so? Because of the talent and instincts of the magician who made it. RKO Studio, where Welles made Citizen Kane. He was staging Shakespeare at the age of 4. His mother died when he was 8, and his father when he was 12. He lived in Shanghai, visited the palaces of faded emperors, got to know the story of power, and tramped through its ruins. He should have been the D.W. Griffith of the sound era. In fact, in a career that lasted nearly 50 years, he didn't direct a single foot of film for any of the 4 major Hollywood studios. Norman Lloyd played the poet Cinna in Welles's acclaimed staging of Julius Caesar. The story of the staging was told inaccurately in the recent film Me and Orson Welles.
What is my name? Whither am I going? Where do I dwell?
Enough! This is worse than terrible. Cinna is Shakespeare's indictment of the intelligentsia. He's a lofty, Byronic figure.
You know, I completely disagree.
I never had that kind of argument with Orson. And as I watched that, I was embarrassed because I never would have had that kind of argument with Orson.
But just as an actor like Lloyd revered Welles, so Welles revered his own heroes. Though he learnt much from Stagecoach, the great force in his films, their battering ram, comes from theatre and elsewhere. Here he plays Shakespeare's Falstaff, a buffoon shot in deep space. He was interested in Italian Renaissance painting. His attraction to powerful people, kings, tycoons, inventors, is like Shakespeare's. Also like Shakespeare, he looked to the past, to times before democracy and liberalism. Here it's the world of Henry IV, John Gielgud, dwarfed by a massive empty cathedral. Citizen Kane thinks of himself as a Medici or Mughal emperor. Kane is full of the lust for power. His world is massive but empty. Maybe the last time he felt anything real was as a boy, playing in the snow on his rosebud sledge in this incredible scene in deep space with tracking camera.
Tell him now. Yes. I'll sign those papers.
Citizen Kane denounced the grandeur, egomania, and maybe even the cinematic hubris that made Cabiria's tracking shots. and intolerance's epic scale. And the general's outlandish production values. Keaton's film was famously expensive. Shakespeare and the Medicis, the Mughals, Ottomans, and Stagecoach were not the only sources of Wells's visual and human ideas. There was the fact of his own body and voice. Both were enormous, mature, unfeasible even. It was like he was painted by Holbein. He could never play a young person, or a teenager, or an ordinary guy, or a 20th century everyman. The space in his films was gigantic because his persona was gigantic. And the sound was gigantic too. Whispers in close-up, echoes from miles back.
49,000 acres of nothing but scenery and statues. I'm lonesome.
Till just yesterday, we've had no less than 50 of your friends at any one time. I think if you look carefully in the West Wing, Susan, you'll find about a dozen vacationers still in residence.
He extended the overlapping dialogue of Howard Hawks' comedies to fill a whole film.
Can you prove it isn't? Mr. Bernstein, I'd like you to meet Mr. Thatcher.
I'll just borrow
How do you do,
the
Mr.
guard.
Thatcher? Leland,
Hello.
Mr. Thatcher, my ex-guardian. We have no secrets from our readers, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Thatcher is one of our most devoted readers.
The visual ideas of Toland and Wells about deep focus and deep space excited filmmakers around the world. Look at the depth of this scene in The Maltese Falcon. Humphrey Bogart's thumb, no more than 20 centimeters from the camera, is clearly in focus. Look at this incredible scene in a bar in The Best Years of Our Lives. The older man, Frederick March, asks the younger, Dana Andrews, to end his romance with the older man's daughter. Andrews agrees to do so and goes to call her in a phone box. As the phone call's the main drama in this scene, you'd expect director Weiler and DP Greg Toland to set up their camera near the box so that we can see and hear the action. But instead, they put it far away, beside this piano, where a war veteran who's lost his hands is playing. The father's at the piano too, but anxiously looks to the tiny booth in the extreme background. It's as if the crucial action has been sucked away by a black hole. We're forced to imagine the conversation, just as, in real life, we can't always see everything that we want to see. Years later, the Austrian Michael Haneke used deep space to show a woman on a train getting away from harassment. And the Hungarian Béla Tarr used deep space to move our eyes from foreground to background and then to foreground again. In each case, the effect was one of tension, as if the world is in a force field in which the people are held. Deep staging in American cinema would become less fashionable again in the 1950s. The new colour widescreen film stocks were just not sensitive enough to suck in all that information at once. So here, in How to Marry a Millionaire, the space is shallow and the actors are displayed across it like a washing line. Very long lenses in the 60s and 70s excited directors about very shallow focus. Here, filmed with a long lens, Anouk Aimée floated in her own visual world like Garbo in the 1920s. And in the 1990s, Michael Mann's film Heat, influenced by pop videos, used the newest types of long lens to create focus so shallow that the lights behind Al Pacino in this shootout become dreamy blobs. But it was this place, Italy, that was at the centre of the movie world in the 1940s. This film school, Centro Sperimentale, was opened under Mussolini in the 1930s. This famous film studio, where great sets had been built, where Italian epics and comedies had been made, had been used as an army barracks during World War II. And film lights were limited. So filmmakers took to the streets. Before the war, central Rome looked like this. But by 1945, it looked like this. People still went about their lives, but the world had changed. The city had changed. The film industry had changed. And so, in a series of films made in Italy between 1945 and 1952, the language of film changed. What became known as rubble movies were born. The first was this one, Rome Open City, directed by Roberto Rossellini. The film started as a documentary about a priest in Rome during World War II, but grew into a portrait of the city, struggling to resist fascism and Nazism. This is how the actress in the film was shot and lit. Old style, glamour, a negligee. But look at how the older woman in the film's presented. Deglamorized, single light source. She's pregnant, but not married, daring for the time. And she's anti-fascist. Another anti-fascist in the film, Don Pellegrini, is the priest in this church. Rossellini wanted his images plain, unadorned, so he used lenses of about 50 millimeters. Rather than the Wellesian wide-angle lenses. Or longer lenses. He didn't care too much if the shot wasn't in focus.
Ha detto Romoletto. Ah, Romoletto dice queste cose. Don Pier, mi raccomando, non lo dica a nessuno.
And whilst not hand-holding the camera much, he seemed to have his DP loosen the head of the tripod to give loads of movement. Light bulbs were bare in Italian neorealism. And Martin Scorsese says that they influenced the bare light bulbs in Raging Bull.
I'd much rather recite. That's entertainment.
And it's said that in these neorealist films, we saw one of these for the first time. Rossellini said that if, by chance, he made a beautiful shot, he'd cut it out. If the nature of movie beauty changed in Europe in the late 1940s, it was partly because of a writer called Cesare Sabatini. He said, before this, if one was thinking over the idea of a film on, say, a strike, one would immediately invent a plot, and the strike itself became only the background to the film. Today, he said in a later interview, we would describe the strike itself. We have an unlimited trust in things, facts, and people. This was revolutionary, the reduction of plot, de-dramatization. And Sabatini said something even more revealing. When we've thought out a scene, we feel the need to remain in it because it can contain so many echoes and reverberations. This was again revelatory. Things took place in real time. Ordinary details mattered. Where Alfred Hitchcock was to say that cinema was life with the boring bits cut out, Sabatini and the neorealists said that cinema is the boring bits. The most famous film that Zavattini wrote, Bicycle Thieves, is about an unemployed man who has his bike, his only chance of getting casual work, stolen. He and his son look all over Rome for it. In the end, worn out and afraid of not being able to get even basic work, he himself steals a bike. Director Vittorio De Sica has the scene shot starkly, in harsh light, and keeps the camera far back from the theft, as if not to intrude on the father's shame. But then the boy sees the father's theft. We're close to him. This tracking shot shows that films like Bicycle Thieves are not afraid of conventional filming, empathy, point of view, tension, and emotion. But this scene, a few moments earlier, is more unusual. The boy nearly gets hit by a car twice. In a Hollywood film, the dad would have seen this and grabbed the boy and scolded him or comforted him, but also realized how much he loves him. But in Italian neorealism, such moments just happened, without cause or effect. It was a loose end. It didn't play back into the plot. Pre-war stories were chains of cause and effect, but in Italian neorealism, the chain was sometimes broken. Neorealism turned the realist dissidents of 20s cinema into a national film movement in the 40s, then swept around the world. Far away from neorealism and the rubble of Europe, the mythic capital of the American movie industry, Hollywood, started to get less glossy in the 1940s too. A starlet called Peg Entwistle killed herself by jumping from this letter in the Hollywood sign. After a long day in the sunshine in LA, nighttime falls. There are few street lights, so it's really dark. Hardly anyone walks, so those that do can hear their own footsteps. The eucalyptus and orange blossom smells almost sickly sweet. The grills on windows cast shadows like prisons. Throughout World War II, Hollywood kept making this kind of film. Betty Grable, in her feathers and decor, was one of wartime's most popular stars. But America's most curious filmmakers went abroad or just watched newsreels and saw this. And this, the documentary tragedy of Rome Open City. The romantic exuberance of Hollywood ebbed. Its paradise got a bit lost. And it showed. Between 1941 and 1959, more than 350 dark films were made in Hollywood. Films that became known as film noir. One of the earliest and most influential was this one, Double Indemnity.
Who do you suspect?
Look at this scene in it. The actress and the wall at the far end of the corridor are both in focus. the visual depth of Mitsuguchi, Stagecoach, and Citizen Kane.
See you at the office in the morning.
Yeah.
The situation is this. The insurance man who's coming out of the door has fallen for the woman who hides behind the door, the wife of one of his clients. She convinces him to help her kill her husband and share the insurance payout. They do so. The man's boss in the dark suit begins to suspect that the wife is the murderess and goes to the man's apartment to tell him his hunch. If the boss saw the wife there, it would confirm his hunch and implicate the man, his employee. So the wife hides behind the man's outward opening door.
Good night, Keys.
So long, Walter.
Double Indemnity's director, Billy Wilder, was an Austrian Jew who fled the Nazis in 1933. Ironically filmed here in the bright sun of Santa Monica, his films were thematically dark. Like many émigrés who made great film noir, Fritz Lang, Robert Siodmak, Otto Preminger, Michael Curtiz, Jacques Tourneur, he loved the unpretentiousness of America, but hated its worship of money. The wife in this scene lusts for it. The man lusts for her, and, because he's weak and flawed, for money too. Robert Towne, who wrote the film Chinatown.
Cinema noir, the characters are fated in one way or another, and it's a character flaw of some kind. They're like moths and flames. You look at Walter in Double Indemnity.
And I wanted to see her again, close, without that silly staircase between us.
He just can't resist a pretty anklet. You look at Robert Mitchum in Out of the Past. He can't, he wants to be with a decent girl, but he can't stay out of the way. It's usually a femme fatale. Even when he wants to disentangle himself, he can't avoid it. Get us with Chinatown. There's some flaw in them that drives them to their fate, even as they try to avoid it. And not just a dark world where they get kind of beaten up. They are men who, at some deep unconscious level, seek out their fate, even as they try to avoid it.
Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull.
The flawed hero, which first sort of appeared in the Freud-influenced films, but it never really took hold till after the war, when these guys came home from the war, and you had all of that social dislocation, where women who had gotten jobs in the war were now expected to give up their jobs, and men who fought in the war came home and didn't have any money. There's a lot of frustration. And so that kind of Freudian hero started feeling like a much more realistic hero than he had felt like in, the 30s and 40s.
War, the city of LA, flawed characters, and social and legal collapse created noir, but so did other things. The lattice of shadows of German expressionism can be seen. In this German film, light casts a grid of shadows, but the handrail is a lattice too. Double Indemnity was co-written by Raymond Chandler, who, along with Dashiell Hammett, created the character types and situations of noir. Howard Hawks filmed Chandler's The Big Sleep in 1946. Humphrey Bogart played Philip Marlowe. The film crackled with snappy dialogue, a feature of the best noirs.
May I use your phone, Mr. Marlowe? Hello? Police headquarters, please. Hello, this is Mrs.
Hello, what do you want, please? What? I called you. Say, who is this? Sergeant Riley? Well, there isn't any Sergeant Riley here. Wait a minute, you better talk to my mother.
The Big Sleep was the most influential film noir since Double Indemnity. Its complex plot set a fashion. The film was co-written by Lee Brackett, another great female screenwriter, who co-wrote this film, Rio Bravo, in which Angie Dickinson gets the best lines.
You see, that's what I'd do if I were the kind of girl that you think I am.
And Brackett co-wrote this film, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. In the film's climax, Luke discovers, in the style of a Hollywood romance, that Darth Vader's his father. Brackett had helped bring traditional movie storytelling into the 70s. The women in film noir haunt the films. Jane Greer in Out of the Past takes her time, moves like velvet, knows that the man is weak, enjoys his gaze, turns it to her advantage. Usually in noir, it's an immoral advantage. And yet, of the 350 or so noirs, only one, this one, was directed by a woman, Ida Lupino. She mastered the form using spotlighting and subjective camera, a film with downturned eyes. Directing an American film had become, by this stage, a boys' club. And there's so much more to say about film noir. The pugnacious presence of actor Edward G. Robinson in Double Indemnity is a reminder of how noir was fascinated by the sort of gangster films of the 30s in which Robinson appeared. In those, he was disdainful, dapper. And its pessimism came in part from the poetic realist films of France in the 1930s, such as this moody encounter between two lost souls in Quai des Brumes. If proof is needed that France influenced America in the 40s, look at this film, La Chienne, directed by Jean Renoir. A man falls in love with a hard-hearted young woman. It was remade as Scarlet Street by Fritz Lang in America 14 years later. The scene where the man pleads for the woman's love is very similar. Its star, Edward G. Robinson.
I wanted to laugh in your face.
Here in Montrose, a suburb of Los Angeles, a B-movie called Gun Crazy was shot in 1950. It was one of the most innovative, passionate noirs ever made and shows how documentary and neorealism influenced the genre. It was directed by this Hemingway-esque man, speaking on his fishing boat, the great B-movie director, Joseph H. Lewis. A man and a woman, passionate and reckless, are about to rob a bank. Their hearts are beating. In a conventional noir, we'd see their faces, sweaty brows. Here, Lewis keeps the camera behind them. His DP sat in the back seat on a jockey saddle. He made a special board on which the camera could pan. Lewis then had new button microphones put on the actors and on a policeman we're about to see, and gave the performers free rein to improvise.
There's a car just pulled out. If we can get in there. So we'll have to, yeah. Okay, right in here.
Fast as you can.
Don't worry. It'll be a minute longer than I have to. Here goes nothing.
Okay.
Filming a stick-up in the conventional way was scheduled to take 4 days. Lewis claims to have shot this in 3 hours and says that the unbroken shot covers 2 miles of ground.
Get out there. Wait, copper, go on. That's right. Stand right there. Okay.
The camera and DP on the jockey saddle move forward and right. Another sound recordist was strapped to the top of the car.
Well,
get up.
I like it.
Good-looking gun.
Thanks.
That's English, ain't it?
That's right.
What show you with?
Cheyenne, Rodeo, and Carnival. The rest will be coming through in a few minutes. I got too far out in front.
You gonna play here?
No.
Well, it's an easy town on shows. 3 tickets, you've covered the whole police force.
That's a pretty nice gun you've got, too.
I'm sorry, I don't let anybody handle it. I killed a man with it last year.
Can you have it coming to him?
Yes, but it wasn't much fun watching him get down. He had an idea he was getting the first shot.
The staging looked so real that passers-by yelled, "They've held up a bank."
Take off.
The deadly passion and stylistic innovation of Gun Crazy were a major influence on a much later film, Bonnie and Clyde, about the anxiety of a couple that robs banks.
Your mama could take his bank.
Straight between the eyes. She didn't fool me for a minute, not this time. I knew
Paul Schrader says that noir died out in 1958, but its influence can be seen much later in LA Confidential, in which Kim Basinger pretends to be Veronica Lake in This Gun for Hire. In Blade Runner, in which Sean Young walks through shadows in a pool of light, like a film noir femme fatale. In The Dark Knight, in which the city is fetid and morally dark. And even in Mumbai noir, such as Shiva, directed by Ram Gopal Varma, all shadows and low camera angles. The influence of film noir has travelled the world. So American film in the 40s was newly serious. But did film noir smash the bauble of romantic cinema? If you've seen this, the sweeping camera moves and sweeping emotions of Titanic, you'll know that the answer is no. Romantic cinema continued. But even to live in LA in the late 40s and 50s started to feel different. Ernst Lubitsch died in 1947. D.W. Griffith and Greg Toland, American cinema's civilizer and its deep space experimenter, both died in 1948. Louis Lumière in France died too, as did Eisenstein in the USSR. Judy Balaban's dad, Barney, ran Paramount Studios for decades, so she was at the center of it all and was engaged to Montgomery Clift.
Originally, our friends were very lighthearted, and it was a lot of socializing and parties and small talk and vacations and whatever. I mean, you know, we were close to Janet and Tony and Dean and Jean Martin, and I was close to Sammy Davis from New York, so we were close to Sammy, and, you know, the whole Rat Pack thing, Sinatra, and Gene Kelly lived across the street from us, and you know, Debbie and Eddie. I mean, it was just a lot of people having a lot of parties, frankly. But there came a moment in time where a lot of that shifted. I was married to Tony Franciosa by then, but the world began to be more conscious of itself in a larger sphere than just simply the insular sense of whatever your own neighborhood was, whether it was in the Midwest or Hollywood. Suddenly there was a more universal consciousness. I look at periods where the movies seem to be ahead of everything, and then there are periods where they seem to be behind everything else in the world. So that, for example, the McCarthy era would be a time when movies were caught in the more backward part of that era.
Calling the House Un-American Activities Committee to order, Chairman J. Parnell Thomas of New Jersey opens an inquiry into possible communist penetration of the Hollywood film industry. The committee is seeking to determine if Red Party members have reached the screen with subversive propaganda.
That's not the question. The
Question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm framing my answer in the only way in which any American citizen can frame his
Then you
answer
denied.
to a question
Then you
which invades his, absolutely invades
Then
his
you
right.
denied. You refused to.
At these hearings, which started in 1947, 50 studio bosses and producers agreed to sack any of their employees who would not cooperate with the government's new anti-communist House Un-American Activities Committee.
Before I will answer this question fully. Your purpose is to use this to disrupt.
This new poison in Hollywood life also helped create the seriousness of film noir.
I've heard people.
The most principled filmmakers refused to testify against leftists.
Well, perhaps this would be a more efficient government without a Congress.
Others named names, and great artists were banned from working, blacklisted. Those affected included Abraham Polonsky, Charlie Chaplin, Dolores Del Rio, Paul Robeson, and Dalton Trumbo. The House Un-American Activities became the single biggest trauma in American cinema. The great cinematographer Haskell Wexler shot America, America for director Elia Kazan, who testified against the leftists.
Kazan was a tremendously talented man, and I talked to him a couple of times about it, but one of the things I remember he said that the main thing about directing is casting. When Kazan's name came up for Lifetime Achievement Award on the Academy, I didn't think that Gadge, as we call him, should get that award. And Carl Malden said, look, he's dying. He's a great director. I'm going to vote for him. So I did, and I wrote to Gadge, and I said, Dear Gadge, I voted for you because I think you deserve the Lifetime Achievement Award. I think it might be good if you said something which may sound euphemistic, but you're saying that you're sorry that you may have hurt some people. I forget the exact words I used, but and my nickname was Pete for many years, given to me by a whore in Puerto Rico, and she Kazan wrote me back, Pete, go fuck yourself, Gadge, and that's the way he was to the moment he died.
He must have felt guilt that he couldn't admit.
Well, I mean, it certainly was an important thing. He didn't have to squeal. He didn't have to. He was on the top. He was on the top of the world. You know, and you're right. Rod Steiger and a lot of other people didn't, would not accept anything about him.
Kazan's Oscar award was televised, of course. The famous reaction shots of the Oscar broadcast were more telling than ever. Carl Malden and Warren Beatty stand and clap Kazan. Steven Spielberg sits and claps. Ed Harris and Amy Madigan don't clap at all. Meryl Streep and Lynn Redgrave clap. Nick Nolte doesn't. Back in 1949, the House Un-American Activities Committee chairman, J. Parnell Thomas, was sentenced to prison for embezzlement. The Walk of Fame in Hollywood Boulevard has stars dedicated to minor showbiz personalities, but still doesn't carry the name of many of the blacklistees. And there were other momentous changes in the American film industry at the time. In 1948, the 5 main studios were forced by the US Supreme Court to sell their cinemas. One of them, Paramount, sold 1,450 of them.
The government began the antitrust action against them because they said you cannot produce, distribute, and exhibit a product without being, violating antitrust laws. And so the government began this investigation and suit against the industry that went on for some years. And my father could see, as he felt, that the handwriting was on the wall and that no matter how long they fought it, they were going to lose. So he made a decision on behalf of what he felt was the right thing for the shareholders of the company, that they should stop fighting this, stop spending money on it, and figure out how to, restructure the company so that there were two separate organizations, one of which would produce and distribute films, and the other one of which would be a theater company.
But in the early 50s, just as the studio system, what Stanley Donen called the garden, was dying, so it produced some of its most splendid blooms. At MGM, cosmopolitan producer Arthur Freed gave sophisticates like Gene Kelly, Vincent Minnelli, and Stanley Donen a chance to show that the studios still had joy in them, and beauty too. This extended dance sequence in An American in Paris was influenced by the success of the remarkable one in the British film The Red Shoes. Flashing red lights, painted studio backdrops. Gene Kelly was a leftist and abhorred the anti-communist witch hunts. But both he and Stanley Donen, who started as a choreographer, were Americans born and bred, not emigres, and at first their outlook was optimistic. Drawn from vaudeville and clowning, as this scene shows. Like many of his generation, Donen found the design, dance, and sexuality of the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers musicals of the 30s entrancing.
I was 9 years old, and I was a little boy in a southern town in South Carolina where I was born and grew up, and I had never experienced anything like that. And I was not in any way, my family wasn't related to dancing or movies or anything. And this moment of transcended life, real life, there they were, dancing to the music, enjoying being alive, expressing their feelings. The idea of Gene Kelly singing in the rain and letting the rain hit him that's the idea, that he's so joyful that rain is a pleasure. He's not worried about getting wet. He's thrilled with being in love.
The camera expresses the joy in itself without even Gene Kelly being there, just the uplift of the camera.
It's not the uplift of the camera, it's the photograph of the camera being uplifted. It's what the camera sees that does it. The camera does nothing, it just does what we tell it to do. I can't talk to the camera and say, now lift up, I want to feel the joy of being weightless. I've said to people before, if you say to a writer, does the pencil write the story? Of course it doesn't. And the camera is just the pencil that we're working with.
In Singing in the Rain, Donen and Kelly did a kaleidoscopic sequence to make fun of the Busby Berkeley numbers, which they hated.
It's a holiday today, it's a wedding, not a thing to die. My song, let it bring the spring to you.
I used to think they were terrible. Absolutely terrible. I thought they were awful for a long time. And now when I look at them, I think they really are unique and wonderful, and they have a point of view, and I like them a lot. What's interesting is they didn't change at all. I changed. They are what they are. A film locks it it's like the written word on the page. It doesn't change. It's only our opinion of what it means that changes.
Strong word, not in the theater.
Well, the president isn't in the theater.
No, that's right.
Now, on the other
Change in
hand,
Donan's life and work echoes the change in Hollywood itself. In his film Indiscreet, starring Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, for example, he used an innovative technique to challenge censorship.
I found a play I like.
The leading man and leading lady, even if they were married, couldn't be in a bed together. It was censorship. They could, if they were married, they had to be in twin beds in the same room. And I wanted to show how intimate they were, and so I said, I have an idea how I'll have them in bed together, and the censors won't be able to do anything about it. In order to do it, so I could time it and everything, I built both sets, both bedrooms on the same sound stage. I had a camera on each person. We did it all at once, and I could watch them and say, you know, do this, do that. And so it was done as a split screen, but we photographed it as though it was all happening at once.
How long is this going to go on?
How long is what going to go on?
That pretends that we're happy.
You've never pretended we're happy. Who's pretending?
You are. That we're happily married, that you wanted to stay with me.
And, as in American cinema in general, melancholia entered Donan's cinema. Two for the Road was about a married couple. We see one of the first road trips they took together, and one of the last. The movie intercuts the time periods.
You have to admit it, we've changed.
I admit it, we've changed.
It's sad, but that it is.
People back then used to say to me, I love that movie, it's so romantic. And I would be stunned and say, but it's such a hard, tough look at marriage. Why do you think of it as romantic? Because that's what I wanted it to be, to show you how people could live together, the abrasions, the buffeting against each other, and yet the way that you really appreciate your partner.
By this time, Donan had made 21 films, some of the greatest to come out of Hollywood. He was just 43 years old. Did you feel as if you'd run out of things to do?
Oh, God, no. No. I mean, if you feel you've run out of things to do, it means you think you're stupid. You have nothing more to say. I didn't think that. I don't even think it now.
What else did you have to say then, and what else do you have to say now?
I think of Diaghilev with Nijinsky. You know, Diaghilev is supposed to have said to Nijinsky when he was asking him to do a ballet, "Étonne-moi," astonish me. Well, that's what I'm still trying to do. I still want to astonish you about my understanding of what it's all about, how it is, how we react to it, and what can I do.
Just as Donan's films would do, so mainstream American cinema on the whole grew up in the 40s and early 50s, the years of devastation. Under the influence of war and Italian realism, American movies became darker. Life in mainstream American cinema was no longer a bowl of cherries. And deep focus, deep staging, film noir lighting, and the influence of Orson Welles had all given American film style new punch and portent. In Britain in the 40s and 50s, we find films that best sum up the movie complexities of this time of war. An RAF bomber pilot's plane has been hit and is on fire. He has no parachute, so is about to die. His last words are to an American woman on a ground control base. English director Michael Powell and Hungarian writer Emmerich Pressburger plunge us into a moment of searing drama, romantic dialogue, shallow focus, rich colour, and lighting that hides tears.
Are
you in love with anybody? No, don't answer that.
I could love a man like you, Peter.
I love you, June. Your life, and I'm leaving you. Where do you live? On the station?
No, in a big country house about 5 miles from here. Lee Wood House.
Old house?
Yes, very old.
Good, I'll be a ghost and come and see you. You're not frightened of ghosts, are you? It'll be awful if you were.
They formed a company together in 1942 and made films like this one, which were almost mystical in their Englishness, their romance, their opposition to documentary. The airman seems not to die, but instead to have suffered brain damage. During losses in consciousness, he imagines going to heaven to argue for more time on Earth because he's fallen in love with the American woman. Heaven's in black and white, an art director's fantasy. The title of the film, A Matter of Life and Death, tells us what it deals with. The biggest things in life, especially when the world's at war. Powell and Pressburger showed that movie makers didn't have to choose between honesty about the trauma of war and the high style of romantic cinema. No other filmmakers of their time could so combine the two. And another English filmmaker of the 40s told us that war and trauma bring out the best in us. Here he is, Humphrey Jennings, posh, skinny, playing a postman who's so devoted to his duty that even after he's tied up, he still gets his letter delivered. Soon he was directing, with a poetic style all his own. The great British director Terence Davis reveres Jennings.
Oh, yes, even if it only made Listen to Britain. It's one of the great poems. That's a voice. The most moving sequence is around the National Gallery, when the people are just enjoying the sun. And it might be their last summer where they're free. And then you see Myra Hess playing one of the Mozart piano concertos, and you just think what he's saying is that something that is quintessential British, that no one else has got, we've got that. And we were prepared to fight for it.
Jennings believed that because British people share the same landscapes, history and culture, they've got a collective unconsciousness, what he calls the legacy of feeling, the thing that gets people through trauma together. And in terms of film style, Jennings felt that there's a force field between shots. Look at this moment, again from Listen to Britain. A half dozen tin hats, then cut to 5 bareheaded women, their heads where the hats were. Then a statue of Charles I, who was beheaded. Three images together giving us an eerie feeling of the vulnerability of heads. The cinematic sum greater than its parts. Eisenstein's 1 + 1 = 3 again. And in 1949, a final British film marvellously summed up the changes in Western cinema, the trauma, poetics, expressionism, and shadow play in these years. The Third Man is set in Vienna after World War II, a city split between the victors. The film's writer, the Catholic novelist Graham Greene, planted at the heart of the story a great moral crime. A man, Harry Lime, played by Orson Welles, is making money by selling penicillin that's supposed to treat children. Director Carol Reed liked the seriousness of this idea. Its pessimism reminded him of the 30s French poetic realist films he so admired. He and his cinematographer filmed many shots off the horizontal axis to show the moral imbalance.
Wearing down German sea power.
Director Reed had edited this Oscar-winning wartime documentary.
Miles of wire netting for the beaches. 7,200 tons of petrol per day.
With an underwater pipeline to carry it to France. A white star is the emblem of liberation.
And, like the Italians and some of the American filmmakers, felt that cinema had to engage more with reality.
Come out, whoever you are.
This sequence in The Third Man, in which Wells as Harry Lime is first revealed, had the expressionist bravura of Wells's own film, Citizen Kane.
Seien Sie deppert? Ja, Sie meine ich, schauen Sie nicht so blöd. Eine Frechheit ist das, mitten in der Nacht so einen Krawall zu machen.
Harry!
Eine Frechheit ist das, so einen Krawall zu machen.
In this famous ending, Lime's decent, disappointed friend, Holly Martins, stands to the left of the image, waiting for Anna, Lime's old girlfriend, whom Holly has come to love. She walks towards him from the extreme distance, the deep staging of Wells. Reed doesn't cut the shot or dissolve the walk, as Scorsese would later do in Taxi Driver. Reed lets Anna walk the whole way in real time, the de-dramatized time of Italian neorealism. Writer Green envisaged a happy ending where Anna would take Holly's arm, as Roman Polanski would do decades later with the ending of Chinatown. Reed rejected such optimism. Anna turns away from Holly and walks out of shot. She prefers the memory of the rogue, Harry Lime, to the weak, decent man. One of the most daring endings in mainstream film history. One of the greatest films ever made. The Third Man is a compendium of 40s cinema. The new moral seriousness of the movies, their realism and deep staging, would sweep across the world in the 50s to India, Africa, South America, and Japan. New continents of filmmaking would emerge, new stories and styles, framings and visions. For the first time in the story of film, cinema would be global.